Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would discuss with you guys the amount of protein that is needed to maximize muscle mass based upon all the available literature in actual serious training lifters. Because quite frankly, we don't care about recreational lifters for numbers like this. It's just not that important. Because most people who are looking for an optimal number train relatively seriously. So again, we only really care about the data that is looking at competitive weightlifters of some type, whether it's weightlifting, powerlifting, serious bodybuilders, things like that. These are the numbers that we want to draw from in studies. And what has been found consistently is that even these groups, if they have slightly higher needs, the maximum muscle growth occurs at around 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. That is approximately 0.8 grams per pound of body weight for those who use freedom units. All right, now when I make this statement, people freak out about it. We're like, but you eat more than that. You oftentimes advocate more than that. Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely true. Doesn't make it less true though. In other words, because of that doesn't mean that this data isn't true. It doesn't mean there aren't other reasons. Something I have routinely pointed out is that there is decent data on protein overfeeding. And when we say protein overfeeding, we're talking about eating double or more of these numbers that I just gave you. Okay? When we start hitting double that, that's protein overfeeding. There is data on fat loss and recomposition with that. It does make it easier to lose body fat. Okay, it makes it easier to lose body fat. And what you see usually is people who do that and they try to overfeed, meaning they try to go into a small calorie surplus while consuming enormous amounts of this. What happens in the studies, they tend to lose a little body fat. They lose fat. All right, but when we're having these conversations, we're not talking about fat loss. We're talking about muscle gain. And that is a big point that people don't get when conversations come up. We can discuss these things. We can discuss, for example, when I've explained that carbohydrates don't store as body fat appreciably in humans and not in subcutaneous fat at all. And you point out that on extremely low fat diets, carb overfeeding doesn't cause fat gain. People will respond with, but when I lose weight, it's like, that's not what we're talking about. Completely separate topic. They'll say, I do really well on a low carb diet, so explain that. I'm like, because you ate a calorie deficit. That doesn't mean that you're gaining fat from the carbohydrates that you eat. Okay? Weight gain, lean weight gain, like gaining weight without gaining body fat, is not the same thing as losing weight. In fact, they're total opposites. Gaining weight versus losing weight are opposites, irrespective of how much is body fat or not. I would also point out to those same people, I think that there's data to suggest that lower carbohydrate can equal faster muscle loss too when you're in a deficit. So just put that in perspective. So again, when I say these things, people are like, oh, this is a flip-flop, this is conflicting data, but it's not. Because when we discuss protein overfeeding, I've always said there isn't evidence that protein overfeeding causes more muscle growth. There's evidence that protein overfeeding can facilitate a little bit of fat loss. Okay, again, we have to put into context when we're having these conversations, gaining muscle and losing fat are not the same thing. They are separate topics. So we're talking about gaining muscle, all right? Gaining muscle and maximizing it. That's literally what I mean is that 1.6 grams, meaning no study has found intakes, no well-done study. Let me rephrase that. All the studies that have made it through peer review, gone into meta-analysis, they don't find muscle growth beyond that. They just don't. Some of them find it lower. They're not finding it higher. So when we talk about, I want to eat enough to be safe. Okay, that is your being safe. meaning because a few studies have found muscle growth to occur small, very, very, very small amounts of additional muscle growth to occur when you go that high over slightly lower. That is your safety, because some of the studies showed around 1.2 grams per kilo. So let's what do we mean by that? So for me, let's just call me 220, even though I'm thinking about 215 the time this video is made. All right, that's 100 kilograms. That's 160 grams of protein. Some of the studies will show that I could do it at 120. A few still show really great or close to optimal at about 100. Now, when we hear this stuff, you will see people interpret this data as the minimum intake is 1.6 grams. No, that's the maximum to which you'll see a muscle growth benefit. Not saying there can't be some satiety or metabolic benefits or exothermic effect, things like that from going beyond it. Wound healing, okay? But in this case, we're talking muscle growth, and that includes healing from training as part of the process. All right, so that's a separate topic, and anecdote doesn't really matter there because we can control and study this. By that same token, you'll have people who dismiss this completely, and I've seen that on the other extreme because people will see what Mentor, some other people wrote, and some of these HIIT advocates. You only can use a couple of grams of protein a day to build muscle, so you don't need to even care about protein intake. Well, that's not true either. Is the other part true that gaining new muscle tissue might only be a couple grams of protein a day? Sure. That statement isn't false. But what we're talking about is, does the intake itself, is it associated with an upward increase in muscle protein synthesis that shows a measurable change in muscle growth? Well, it is more than a gram or two. It's up in that range. It's that 1 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight. So for someone at my weight, that's between 100 and 160 grams. That assumes mixed protein sources. Okay, that assumes a mixture of very high bioavailable sources plus plant sources. This is everything added up together. Okay, that could also explain the discrepancy. That might be why some studies have found, as low as 1 to 1.2, because maybe it was almost exclusively animal source protein. Okay, whereas in the ones that go up to the 1.6, it's more mixed protein sources, and that is actually a viable explanation for why there is a little disparity in there. But when we start talking about hitting 1.5, 1.6, you are absolutely in your safety margin for maximizing muscle growth. At this point, I always tell people you may want to focus more on carbohydrates at that point. May be more beneficial to you. Right? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.